Okay, it is finally time for one of my favorite movies of the year. It's What's Inside to be released. Right on Netflix, which I have mixed feelings on because 1, it becomes way more accessible, but 2, it's not remotely getting the attention it deserves or the communal viewing experience that made it so fun to watch. So fun that I made sure I went out of my way to get tickets to a screening at South by Southwest after already seeing it at Sundance because I wanted to soak up every audience experience I could. It's kind of absurd that Netflix spent so much money to pick this up and did a pretty bad job marketing it. Like, get whoever Neon has, they cook. Or just hire me! Now, I do recommend watching this movie with the least amount of information possible, but the least spoiler way to describe it is like the most intense version of werewolf or mafia you could imagine between a group of friends seeing each other for mostly the first time since college. And they're all here because of a promise they made to Ruben 8 years ago after the death of his mother to get together the night before his wedding. But there are definitely some mixed emotions and tensions in this group that only get worse when someone no one expects to show up does. So before going into spoilers, let me just try and sell you a little bit more. This is a really strong ensemble cast. It'll probably feel a little bit like a relationship litmus test for some people, not quite to the extremes of Midsommar. And on top of the subject matter itself just being fun, the way the story is told just builds on that with fantastic editing by writer-director Greg Jardin. Some people might find it a little overly flashy and poppy, and I'm not saying that lots happening equals good editing, but it's the intentionality of the editing for the story that makes it work so well. Like, we're not just tossing up a bunch of quick edits because people have low attention span now. It all makes sense to the story that's being told. There's so many fun split screens, sound effects choices, excellent use of RGB lighting, the way they explain and adjust the situation that people are remembering in real time.
He was a genius.
Well, yeah, but he was like weird. Dennis was wild too, though. Yeah. Right, but Forbes like had a temper.
That has gotta be the best way I've ever seen a flashback scene handled. Really great camera work to keep things dynamic and express whatever emotion is being conveyed, whether frantic or more somber. Clearly that lighting and a lot of the music is taking inspiration from giallo filmmaking, particularly Suspiria, which is always fun, and the music in general is just being used so well to push the tone and plot. It all just speaks to somebody having a really clear idea of what they're making and what they want to bring to screen, and it all just really heightens something that would have still been good with traditional editing choices into a realm that just feels so much more exciting. It's a horror-adjacent thriller that makes for a fantastic group viewing experience. As mentioned, it's really not scary at all, so don't worry about that. It is just genuinely way more fun than anything else and just makes for a great rewatch to just pick out a bunch of little details. It's just this wild look at inner conflict, the lies we tell ourselves, the lies we tell others, and identity with the body versus the mind. So if you haven't seen this movie, I would strongly recommend watching it before watching this video because I will start trickling in little things that hint towards the ending as they're happening. Don't worry, I will give warning before we get there if you still just kind of want a little bit of the story build up to see if it's your vibes. But if you do leave to go watch, I hope you come back because maybe I'll point out some fun little details you didn't notice or that you did so that we can geek out together. But first, today's video is brought to you by you, my lovely Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members. Thank you all so much for the support, and if you're new here and enjoy, feel free to subscribe. So let's dive in, starting with the characters. The main couple we're locked in with are Shelby and Cyrus. They've been together for about 8 or 9 years since college and probably shouldn't still be. They're struggling to keep things fresh, and Cyrus is offering up ways to make their intimacy better, but when Shelby actually tries them, he just shuts her down in the worst ways.
Remember we talked about the wig thing?
Oh, you actually wanted to do that?
And they are both obsessed with this influencer named Nikki, Shelby because she wants to be her, and Cyrus because he wants to, well...
I know sometimes it's scary to take risks.
Oh, I was in the middle of doing some work.
So things not going so well here. He literally looks terrified that his girlfriend's trying to put the moves on him. And yes, his character in so many ways is terrible, but the actor is so very good, you have no idea, just wait. Shelby's obsession with Nikki becomes even more obvious while they're driving to the reunion because she also wishes she could get that validation, especially when her own boyfriend seems to give Nikki that validation too.
Oh, hey, cutie.
Fire emoji.
Oh, hey, cutie.
Fire emoji.
Fuck you.
What?
Just such fun and chaotic editing while he's just rambling on about BS as she's getting more and more obsessed and deleting posts when they don't instantly get flooded with likes. And this is made all the worse when you realize that influencer isn't just some anonymous person. She is literally going to be at that reunion and she is friends with all of them from college, and it just adds an entire other layer to the problem. Especially with Cyrus's reaction to her thinking they got married.
You got married.
What?
Oh, no,
When?
No,
When?
we didn't get married.
What am I thinking of?
I don't know.
So I absolutely love that she's just trying to have a conversation with Shelby, and Cyrus comes in with like the creepy uncle, where's my hug? But yeah, Nikki, big influencer, always looking to push the social altruism and charitable aspects, but maybe not always with the most genuine intentions. Next up, we'll go with the groom, Ruben. This wild house used to be his mom's before she passed away, and she was apparently an extremely successful vagine artist. And while he's the one getting married the next day, they make sure to let us know that he still has eyes for his college ex, Maya, who was our more free-spirited hippie of the group. Then Brooke, the artist who's specifically making art that changes depending on what color is held over it. Some nice foreshadowing for how color is going to be used in the movie. And Dennis, the lovable, wealthy fuck-up who used to date Nikki in college before it all blew up around an incident involving Forbes. Someone no one expects to show up because he was expelled after said incident, which also involved his younger sister, who was apparently obsessed with Dennis and freaked out when she saw him with Nikki. And as mentioned, this is quite literally some of the most unique editing I've ever seen to convey something that happened in the past, where people are coming in with different details and changing things in real time. I love it.
And you mean my birthday? Why the fuck does everyone always think it was Ruben's?
But even though no one's really heard from Forbes since he was expelled and moved on to be a tech bro, he shows up with a party favor. I do love the energy that no one's particularly excited that he's here except Ruben, but Cyrus still goes to put on the good guy show, but then mostly just starts awkwardly spewing about all the grievances in his relationship when Forbes also thinks they're married or engaged.
She's always talking about like having new experiences, like
I just love the little grin on his face that never leaves. But Forbes was kind of known as the game guy.
Because he liked to put on game nights, people called him Game Boy.
And what he has here is experimental tech that transfers people's consciousness from one body to another, which rightfully freaks them all out because that's never what you'd expect to be happening.
Okay, everybody, please keep your electrodes on.
What the fuck?
It's trippy, huh?
But once everybody stops freaking out, he wants to play a little game of werewolf, or I guess who's in who. And everyone is on board except Shelby, so of course Cyrus makes her do it by flipping the therapy talk about trying new things back on her, even though it's something he was literally just bitching about.
we're always talking about shared experiences, right? This could be something we do together.
Which brings us to round one, which is where I'm gonna start trickling in some stuff that'll kind of like hint towards the finale because there's a lot of them. So again, if you really wanna know nothing, maybe now's when you bop off. So again, spoilers. But it seems fun enough they instantly clock Shelby because she freaks out. Cyrus ends up in Ruben's body, but whoever is in Dennis's body pretends that he's Cyrus. So Cyrus is obviously a little fucked up by that and goes to talk to who he assumes has to be Forbes, who is on Dennis's phone. Remember that detail. So this whole movie is going to be playing with color. I'll notice that some of like the most heated conversations seem to happen with like a green light, but the important one and the one that's really intentional the entire time is that when everything is flooded in red, it's to show whoever the person is inside the body. And you should notice here, mild to large spoiler, that whatever body Forbes is in never ends up under one of these red lights. He will literally be the only character never shown in this way. So that's another detail to remember. So just to get everyone on the same page, they keep the first round pretty simple. Shelby and Brooke swap bodies, Nikki and Maya swap, Cyrus and Ruben swap, and Dennis and Forbes switch, but Forbes is lying about being Cyrus. And even though Cyrus is still pretty freaked out about that, he just goes along with it. So when he comes across Maya in Nikki's body, she wants to take advantage of this potentially guilt-free opportunity to make out with Ruben's body because again, they used to date. Add in a bunch of alcohol, party, drugs, and a literal out-of-body experience, it just kind of makes sense that these weird lines are gonna start getting crossed. And of course, Cyrus is super into it because he's super into Nikki. And because Maya thinks he's Forbes, he thinks he can just get away with making out with his dream girl.
Do you think about me when you're with her?
I have no idea.
Yeah, she really has no idea. But the experience leaves him freaked out overall, especially when he walks in on Shelby making fun of him. So that leads to an argument between the two of them, who throws the arguments that he was making before right back in his face.
An hour ago, you were trying to convince me to play the game, and now that I'm actually having a good time, you're questioning it?
Even after telling her that Forbes lied about who he was, she thinks this is all fun, so he agrees to do it as long as they agree on a signal. So this is officially all starting to feel like a ticking time bomb, which only gets more tense when Dennis starts apologizing to Forbes for getting him expelled, but mentions that Ruben was also involved, which Dennis seems pretty sure that Forbes should know, but Forbes seems confused. So just going a little bit deeper on that spoiler track, warning, spoiler, there is a lot going on to suggest that there is something weird with Forbes. Him never being under the red light, then his cheat sheet for the machine, the F for Forbes is way more bolded, and there's like a little line that looks like he was about to write a different initial first. And they've mentioned that the machine only has enough juice for one more round of swapping before it needs to charge for 24 hours. So with that information in mind, everyone is jazzed on the experience except Cyrus for round 2. Now, I love the editing here. Cyrus gets bopped into Forbes, and Shelby clearly does not want to make herself known to him, so he's just wildly scratching his eyebrow at anyone making eye contact. But it is immediately obvious to us that she's in Nikki's body because the first thing she does is start making Instagram posts. Also, I just love the fractured mirror shot here. There are just so many layers, guys! Now, the movie does do a lot to let you know who's who. Like, Ruben is in Dennis's body because of how he singles in on Maya, how wacky Dennis is inside Cyrus.
Do you think you're a good person?
But just to lay out who's who for everyone watching, Ruben is in Dennis, Dennis is in Cyrus, Cyrus is in Forbes, Forbes is in Ruben, Shelby is in Nikki, Nikki is in Brooke, Brooke is in Maya, and Maya is in Shelby. And it seems like even though he's getting married the next day, Ruben is ready to do exactly the same thing that Maya did, and Brooke is so into it. At first it's because I thought she was into Dennis, but she may be the only person getting off on who's inside and is actually into Ruben, because they head up to the balcony and start aggressively making out. With Brooke saying that she knows it's Ruben inside, but that she doesn't care and wants to be with him. I find the whole thing a really interesting exploration over the idea of someone versus who they actually are. Like, even with Cyrus, he doesn't want Nikki for Nikki, he wants her body. Now, while that's going on, Shelby does accidentally give herself away to Cyrus by freaking out over a spider.
I'm just playing the game like you wanted me to.
But then she kisses him, and it's so funny because she's just having fun being Nikki and taking that roleplay idea to insane levels.
I feel like I'm wearing a wig.
And while he absolutely wants to be with Nikki, his brain is messing with him because he knows it's Shelby in there, and he is fairly into it because she's asking him to call her Nikki, but loses it the second she calls him Forbes because he's projecting his own insecurities and infidelity onto her.
I can't do this. Do you want to fuck Forbes?
Because even though it's Nikki's body, knowing it's Shelby inside makes him less into it, and the second it's like suggested that the person kissing him isn't into him, Cyrus, it throws him off.
Forbes body, your body, I can't get laid by you and anybody because all you do is jerk off on your fucking laptop.
Ooh. So Cyrus is about to tap out and tell everybody who they are, which is right when the balcony railing breaks while Ruben and Brooke are going at it and they plummet to their deaths. So, worst case scenario time. We have two people who are alive while their bodies are dead and vice versa. Maya literally gets to watch the life leave the eye of her own body. Holy shit. And I just love that it instantly sciences the chaos and more erratic camera movement. But it doesn't take that long for it to build back up because the people who lost their bodies aren't that rushed to switch into someone else.
This is our rebirth.
So just to re-up on who's who, because when I've talked to people about this movie, I find this is where a lot of people get the most lost. Ruben died in Dennis's body, and Dennis is in Cyrus. Brooke died in Maya's body, and Maya is in Shelby. Shelby is in Nikki. Nikki is in Brooke. Cyrus is in Forbes, and Forbes is in Ruben. So congratulations, Forbes, as of right now, you have a wedding tomorrow. So in all the confusion of trying to get anyone who can go back into their body back to it, Dennis and Cyrus start hashing out all of that old drama. That all those years ago, Dennis actually did cheat on Nikki with Forbes' sister, so she wasn't delusional, she actually thought they were together. And it was Cyrus that told Nikki so they'd break up, which Dennis doesn't seem to be completely over.
You know exactly how many followers you have.
Okay, well then why don't you tell me, seeing you're looking at my stories?
And Dennis knows the reason why Cyrus did it is because he wanted Nikki.
She obviously said no, so that's why you've been in a relationship for 9 years, because you're such a fucking asshole.
All topped off with Dennis calling the cops, saying that he, as Cyrus, just pushed people to their deaths.
I pushed Dennis Markowitz and Maya Wilson off the roof. Got the phone.
But that's when Nikki realizes that Forbes is trying to run off with the suitcase and knocks him the fuck out. Because yeah, she stands to lose a lot not making it back to her body. But the question is, why doesn't Forbes want his? I get wanting to get out of there before the cops show up in case they take the briefcase, but you think you might want your body back first? But new problem, with Forbes knocked out, Shelby is the only other person who knows how to use the machine because he showed her how, and she likes being Nikki.
Shelby.
I don't want to go back.
Just the way the clock starts ticking in the background of the audio here because they're officially on a time crunch before the cops show up. This is where things hit the wall with Shelby and Nikki. Shelby's insulting Nikki's whole life even though it's like the one thing she covets the most.
So you're jealous of my work?
You post selfies for a living. You made an Instagram account.
God, it's all so fun. But Nikki's really trying to talk up the altruism and charity work she does, even though I'm sure that's just a byproduct of her social capital.
What should I do about the whole wedding party thing? TBH, your feed isn't displaying a whole lot of diversity. Thinking face emoji.
Oh, God. Again, Cyrus can be so hateful, but that actor is crushing it. So once again, we are back in a fight with Cyrus and Shelby because she finally has the confirmation that she was his consolation prize after years of him convincing her there was nothing wrong with their relationship. Going with the self-deprecation angle to pull the heat off of him, saying he just needs help to get off of his porn addiction.
If I didn't have you in my life, I wouldn't have anything at all.
This is the first prize face that I chose and that I want in my life. And I don't need to be Forbes or any of those guys. I need to be me, Cyrus the Virus.
I love it so much, I truly do. But that is Maya in Shelby's body, who was in Nikki's body round 1, so when he says to be careful around the sculpture because he cut himself on it earlier, she now realizes that Cyrus was the one in Ruben's body in round 1.
You were trying to hook up with me when I was in Nikki's body.
Can you please stop talking?
So there goes that tactic out of the window. He's just freaking out while Maya thinks this is some karmic retribution where she's been reincarnated to make things right in other relationships.
And correct all of our sins to teach.
Shut up!
It is so fun to track the different people through different bodies based on their personalities. So Shelby's even more set on staying in Nikki's body now, and she's willing to blow up Nikki's career to make sure it happens.
We just need to switch everybody back.
No one's switching anyone back.
Fuck the water project or any fucking charity. If you guys want to donate, I'm starting a Patreon.
You're a fucking psycho.
Man, they really should have locked up those phones before the round started. Now, obviously, I feel like Shelby's displacing a lot of anger at Nikki here, so while I do feel bad about the Cyrus stuff, this is also very fucked up in such a fun way. Social media really has so severely warped her perception and values. But then Forbes starts scheming with Shelby.
You wouldn't get it.
Get what? Our liars get away with shit? You want to know what I'd do if I were in your shoes?
So we don't hear what happens between them in this scene, but it seems pretty obvious that he gave her a new game plan to get some honesty out of Cyrus by asking him if he'd rather she stay in Nikki's body.
That's what you've always wanted. Deep down. We can make it work.
With the whole suggested plan being she stays in Nikki's body, he transfers into Ruben's body, and they leave Dennis alone to deal with the cops in Cyrus's body. And just as they hear the cops in the distance, the shit stain agrees. But Forbes seems to be playing both sides of the aisle a little bit because he fills Nikki in on the likelihood of Shelby lying to keep her body. So this is where we hit new levels of pea chaos. Nikki's body is allergic to peanut butter, so she incapacitates Shelby with it and basically says, I will not give you the EpiPen if you don't let Forbes check the machine. But while that's happening, Dennis realizes that someone transferred all the money out of his account and assumes it's Cyrus because that's who he thinks was in his body round 1. But now we know that that was Forbes because that's what he was doing in round 1 when he lied about being Cyrus. Seems like a nice little elaborate revenge scheme for getting him expelled and messing with his sister. So right as the cops are kicking down the doors, the button gets hit and we move into our coda. With a very angry Beatrice, Forbes' sister, but it's actually Forbes himself.
Right, but Forbes like had a temper.
I will f***ing rip your spleen out of your asshole! Where the f*** is my suitcase?
Attacking who he thinks is his sister in his body, but it's Dennis. Yes, our final play of the little game, the one person who had more reason to be mad at the entire group than Forbes was his sister. Because apparently it wasn't just a one-time cheating thing, Dennis was actually regularly hooking up with Beatrice and apparently making her wild promises.
She was crazy, having all these freakouts. Episodes, man, they're called episodes.
And it wasn't that night specifically that ruined everything. It was Ruben and Dennis telling everyone that she was making things up to try and save face with Nikki and throwing Forbes under the bus for getting Beatrice drunk when it was actually Dennis.
And then everyone saying she was having an episode actually made her have an episode.
Which then gets her sent to a psychiatric facility and she's never really bounced back. So when he shows up with the machine in hopes of them getting closer, she sees it as this incredible opportunity for revenge by stealing all of Dennis's money, setting it up to seem like Cyrus did it so she and her brother can get off scot-free. But she couldn't have anticipated anyone dying and had to adjust in real time. So let's just figure out where everyone else is. Other than Dennis being in Forbes, Maya is in Brooke, which is probably going to be the best for everyone here, all things considered. Cyrus is back in his body and in jail. Shelby's back in hers and has no interest in helping him.
Why are you being so weird, right? Who are you?
Do you want to talk about getting married? We could get out of here and talk about getting married.
Bro, you literally told her you'd rather she stay in Nikki's body than her own, which is why Beatrice proposed that plan at all, to get the truth out of you. See what I mean by being like a little bit less intense Midsommar? Now I know a lot of people are taking Cyrus's side here, which is fair. He sucks but doesn't deserve to be in jail for it. And Shelby absolutely has the problem of letting her insecurities and envy get so high, so it's like easy to see why people think she ends up worse in the end, which I do think is kind of the point, that social media has built up all the worst qualities in her, and then it gets pushed over the edge by her shitty lying boyfriend being into that person that they both know and obsess over. It's not an excuse for the behavior, obviously, but so much of social media just seems to exist or feels like it's designed to make you feel shitty about your own life, your body, your face, and everything, especially for women. Though I gotta say, it's definitely also getting worse for men now. And not everyone can mentally escape that, especially when the person who like should be your support network is actively trying to make you feel bad for trying.
Oh, you actually wanted to do that?
Still not jail-worthy though. Though I can't deny her throwing his words about how she should stick up for herself back at him is gold.
What should I have said to her?
I don't know. What you did was wrong.
What you did was wrong.
And you're a shitty person.
And you're a shitty person.
Fuck on that, bitch!
Now you may be wondering why Dennis got off pretty easy compared to everyone else except Maya when he's the one that wronged Beatrice the most. And once the death started happening, she already had the money she wanted and just piggybacked off of what Shelby wanted to do because she feels like they both fell victim to dishonest people, but then also kind of like snuck in there at the end to get what she wants, which we'll get to. Because like Shelby, it seems like Beatrice is displacing some of her anger on Nikki because she transferred Nikki into Ruben's body, which is kind of fucked on so many levels.
No. What the fuck?
And she takes over Nikki's body to ride off in the sunset with all of Dennis's money and the briefcase, meaning she'll probably just keep bopping around from person to person with no chance of tracking it down. Man, it is so fun and horrific if you think about this happening to you. Oh my god. So needless to say, Nikki did not stick around for the wedding. So real quick, let's just round through the things that hinted at Forbes at least scheming, but potentially also not being Forbes. The first is obviously going off alone with Dennis's phone after lying about who he was. Then there's the paper with the machine map where it's clear that a different letter, a capital B maybe, was being written, leading to this very overly bold F to conceal it. There's Forbes not being aware that Ruben was involved in getting him expelled, even though it's clear he was supposed to know that. A fun little touch that I really only thought about on the second viewing is that the movie actually starts with the machine being used. It just hasn't been introduced yet, so we don't actively see what's happening. So I forgot about it by the end of my first watch, but that was the moment that Beatrice and Forbes switched and she ran off with the machine. A smaller one is when Beatrice hits Ruben's body and asks if Dennis thinks he's a good person. And the biggest one that suggested that Forbes wasn't in the body is that he never gets the red light treatment, at least not until the end when they start dropping the reveals. And I just think that's also fun. Now I know there's a lot of different questions that some people have had, like in terms of like not saying anything about gender swaps until the end. Originally, I guess that was explained in the movie as a way of easing the mind and body into the switch, which would have made sense to me, but it got cut just for the sake of not having too much exposition. But I really thought that that was intentional to try to conceal our expectations as an audience that that's even a possibility. When they primed your mind to think that this is all same gender swaps, you're less likely to go down that mental thought path, even though Beatrice is always just kind of lingering in the background as a concept and a person. Then there's just so much more to chew on in terms of who these people are, what they're hiding, and how these things all come back out to bite them. Vanity, envy, faux altruism, faux spirituality.
Becoming a different ethnicity could change people's worldviews. Like, it's big stuff.
I'm sure a lot of people have old friends or friend groups that you just haven't really kept in touch with in a long time, and maybe there's some drama between some of the people in those groups that never got fully dealt with because, you know, at some point, what's the point? You probably won't ever see them outside these reunion-style situations anyway. So I really think it's fun to have a movie exploring that on a deeper level while still kind of like singling it in on a specific idea, which is why I like the fact that the story is really centered on Cyrus and Shelby's relationship and the way she envied someone else's life and body, and then we get to explore that to the fullest. But I think that's gonna do it for today's video. I'm sure there's a lot of other stuff that I missed because I've really just been enjoying going back and watching and catching new details, like a little treat for myself. Like I've held off watching it a fourth time because I want to watch it with some friends. So feel free to pop anything down below that you noticed, and if you enjoyed, Greg Jardin also did an AMA on Reddit if you want to check that out for some more insider information. But thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you check out this movie if you haven't already. Even with this explanation, I still think it makes for a great viewing experience, especially if you can get like at least one other person to watch it with you. Thanks as always to my Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Leave a like on the video if you're into that kind of thing. All my other social medias are listed down below. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm mostly okay, and we'll catch you all later.